A major diplomatic force at the world stage.
The rising cost of living in Nigeria continues to impact citizens from all walks of life.
The citizens of Gujarat witnessed a mega roadshow here in the city of Ahmedabad.
China is South Africa's largest trading partner for 134 years straight.
A domestic aircraft carrying 72 people on board crashed in Pokhara city in central Nepal.
165 injuries have been moved, 61 people are confirmed dead, and rescue operations continue around me.
After receiving an entire season's rainfall in a span of 48 hours, Chennai city has literally been brought to its knees.
South Africa, for WION, World is One.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One with me, Ananya Datta. Let's get started. Israel's army announces official withdrawal from Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City, ending its operations in the facility. Wide-scale destruction seen at the site after the Israeli pullback. Delhi court sends Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal to judicial custody till April 15th in the excise policy case. The ED did not seek further custody, even said that the Chief Minister has been uncooperative during the probe. Indian Air Force Chief Air Marshal V.K. Chaudhary takes a sortie on board a fighter jet, tells WION the IAF has always been a first respondent to crises across the globe, with a big focus on developing skills to execute operations fraught with dangers. He cites Indian evacuation operations in Afghanistan. Philippines says it is carrying out what it calls countermeasures against China's conduct in South China Sea. China hits back, says any measures by Philippines will not impact its maritime rights. Mortal remains of 5 Chinese engineers killed in a suicide bomb attack in Pakistan last week accorded a guard of honor before being sent to China. Beijing has sent a team to Pakistan to probe the attack against its nationals in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol says the government is open to talks with doctors who oppose his plan to increase medical school admissions, but also accuse critics of offering no reasonable alternative to ease a doctor shortage. Big story coming in. Thousands of Israelis gathered outside Parliament building in Jerusalem on Sunday in the largest anti-government demonstrations since the country went to war in October. United States and Israel are expected to hold a virtual meeting to discuss the Biden administration's alternative proposal to an Israeli military invasion of Rafah. The meeting, which was supposed to take place last week, has become a contentious issue between Benjamin Netanyahu and Joe Biden. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is expected to lead the U.S. side in the meeting. The U.S. team includes representatives from the Pentagon, State Department, and the U.S. intelligence agencies. Ron Dermer and Netanyahu's National Security Advisor are going to lead the talks from the Israeli side, with senior defense and intelligence officials participating. A senior Israeli official said that a second meeting in person is planned to take place as soon as next week. Netanyahu, meanwhile, stated that the military is preparing to move civilians out of Rafah, provide them with aid, and then carry out an attack on the remaining Hamas fighting battalions. Netanyahu spoke while thousands of protesters rallied in Jerusalem in a show of frustration with his government, urging him to resign. Demonstrators urged the government to reach a ceasefire deal to free dozens of hostages held by the Hamas group in Gaza and to hold early elections.
פגרת הפסח. פריבילגיה. ההתנשאות, הניצול וחוסר השוויון.
Now, our correspondent Jody Cohen has more on this. She talks about what could be discussed in the expected virtual meeting between Israel and the United States.
Right, so there appear to be two plans. Firstly, the Israeli plan is reportedly to evacuate civilians to central Gaza through protected routes, provide humanitarian assistance there, and then carry out a ground operation to target Hamas in Rafah. Now, the aims also are thought to be to look for information about the Israeli hostages there and secure the border between Gaza and Egypt to prevent future arms smuggling. Now, the Biden administration is reportedly presenting their alternative to Israel's plan in this virtual meeting on Monday. Now, that would reportedly be to isolate Rafah and set up a joint control room to coordinate targeted operations against Hamas. Now, it's not clear how that would be safe for civilians who would stay in Rafah. It's also not clear if it would be more effective in dismantling Hamas. And General Petraeus, the former head of the CIA and commander of US troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, has suggested that Israel must go into Rafah to destroy Hamas. So it remains to be seen what will be decided in these meetings.
Now, to take this further, we are being joined by Lieutenant Colonel Mordechai Kedar from Tel Aviv. He is a former senior IDF military intelligence officer. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for joining us here on WION. I want to ask you, US has been very vocal against Israel's operation in Rafah. Do you think there could come a point in today's virtual meeting where Washington could convince Netanyahu not to go ahead with its invasion?
Look, the Americans know exactly what Netanyahu wants. Netanyahu knows exactly what the Americans want. And both sides are familiar with each other, and they have, for many years, good cooperation. And we all believe that this cooperation will continue. We pull here, you push there. But in general, the broad lines of the cooperation between Israel and the United States is well known.
All right. So I want to ask you the logistics of it. When the Israeli military says that millions of Palestinians will be evacuated from Rafah before the operation, where will they actually go?
Gaza is a large piece of land, and there are places where to put them, like to the north from Rafah. This is doable, and otherwise the IDF would not talk about this. Definitely, we would like to refrain from attacking civilians if there is no need. But unfortunately, there is another good reason why to evacuate the civilians, because the Hamas terrorists are actually hiding within regular people. And this is a very big problem, how to locate them if they hide in the tents and the whatever they live there now. So this is why you have to evacuate the people in order to deal only with the Hamas, ISIS fighters.
Lieutenant Colonel, you say Gaza is a big place. It's just 64 square kilometers. It is not indeed a big place. And the reason we're talking about where will the people from Rafah go is because they were displaced from the first place from the central and the northern part of Gaza. So I'm talking about the logistics here. When Netanyahu's government says that about 1 million Palestinians will be evacuated from Rafah before the invasion begins, where will they go?
There is enough space which they can be there, no doubt, don't worry.
But do you think it's inhabitable?
Just like Rafah. In Rafah there are no houses. They are living in tents and temporary housings. These things can be very easily moved to other places. It's not such a big thing. Not heavy things, not heavy buildings. These are tents and things which were brought only recently in order to host those people whose housing were destroyed through the war because of Hamas, because Hamas couldn't care less about the people, about the Palestinians, and they sacrificed the Palestinians in order to save themselves. They didn't allow them to go into the tunnels in order to fight, to run away from the fights.
Lieutenant Colonel, I'm sorry to interject, but we are not talking about if Hamas cares about the Palestinians or not. We are talking about if Israel cares about the Palestinians or not. But so far, thank you so much for speaking with us here on WION and getting us all those insights. All right, let's shift focus now. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing a fresh Tory rebellion as dozens of Conservative MPs are planning to vote against the government's plan to criminalise homelessness. Under a flagship crime bill that was tabled by former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, UK ministers aim to give police the powers to fine or move any homeless person. However, this Tory move angered members of its own party from both the left and the right. More than 40 Conservative MPs say that they will vote against the measures in the criminal justice bill that is about to go through the House of Commons. The bill proposed by Braverman aims to give police the power to fine or jail homeless persons. Rough sleepers could be fined more than $3,000. Earlier, Braverman described rough sleeping as a quote-unquote lifestyle choice while defending her decision. According to critics, the bill can consider someone a quote-unquote nuisance merely for sleeping on a footpath. As they say, the bill hurt people for simply being homeless. Former Tory leader Ian Duncan Smith and former Deputy Prime Minister Damien Green are among the Conservative MPs who are opposed to the bill. And the campaign is being coordinated by Bob Blackman, who is the Joint Secretary of the Conservative Backbench 1922 Committee. Meanwhile, according to latest YouGov poll, Reform UK beat Tories among working class voters. Nigel Farage hinted at standing at general elections after survey puts Upstart Party within touching distance of Conservatives nationally. Polls suggest the party he founded is in neck-and-neck race with the Conservatives among some groups. The latest YouGov poll for The Times puts Reform on 16%, not too far behind the Conservatives at 21%. Among voters in the middle of working class, Reform appears narrowly ahead on 23 points to 22. Reform is also ahead of the Tories in the north of England, while the two parties are neck and neck in the Midlands. The two parties are in effect tied among voters aged 50 to 64. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has put cutting down long NHS waiting list as one of his priorities. But a new estimate suggests the threat of long waiting lists still looms over the country. A study claims last year more than 250 patients may have died every week due to the long waiting list. According to research by Royal College of Emergency Medicine, patients are coming to harm due to spending hours in emergency departments, and particularly after a decision has been made to admit them. According to latest data, in February, over 44,000 people waited more than 12 hours in A&E departments. In 2023, 1.54 million emergency patients waited 12 hours or more, out of which millions of those were waiting to be admitted. In 2022, the RCEM said that 300 to 500 excess deaths likely to have occurred in England each week. The study found that there was one excess death for every 72 patients that spent 8 to 12 hours in an A&E department, and the risk of death increased after every 5 hours and got worse with longer waiting time. For the latest study, RCEM used the data of more than 5 million NHS patients. According to the president of the college, excessively long waits continue to put patients at risk of serious harm. While underlining insufficient funding and under-resourcing, Dr. Adrian Boyle, urgent intervention is needed. Cutting long NHS waiting lists is one of Sunak's 5 priorities. In February, Sunak admitted that performances in A&E and ambulance waiting times are not good enough. A new survey claims that the UK's National Health Secretary is witnessing a record low public satisfaction. According to British Social Attitude Survey, 52% of respondents are dissatisfied with the NHS. National Centre for Social Research polled more than 3,000 people across England, Wales and Scotland. Most of the respondents said that it takes too long to get a general physician or hospital appointment. Staff shortage at NHS is the second most cited reason, followed by low government spending on NHS. General Secretary of Royal College of Nursing Pat Cullen says that voters must now make NHS and care services as the central issue of the general election. Peruvian President Dina Boluarte has refused to resign after facing an inquiry in a graft scandal. Her house was raided on Saturday, a part of a corruption probe. She faces inquiries into possible illicit enrichment and failure to declare ownership of luxury Rolex watches. Boluarte has denied the allegations.
I will be attending as soon as possible before the prosecutor's office to clarify the watches. I have always said I am an honest woman. I took office with clean hands and thus I will retire from the presidency in 2026.
2 weeks ago, prosecutors began preliminary inquiries following a media report that the president possessed several Rolex watches. Several officials raided Boluarte's house on Friday night and the palace on Saturday morning. Boluarte has insisted that she entered government with quote-unquote clean hands. Peru's Prime Minister has also described the raid as disproportionate and unconstitutional.
There has been a raid at the presidential office and in the presidential residence. The President of the Republic was present during the latter process and contributed to the case. Yet, as I have just said, I want to say, we consider the actions taken absolutely disproportional, unjustified, if not illegal and unconstitutional.
Boluarte is in office since December of 2022. She has acknowledged that she owns Rolex watches, however says that she had bought them with money she earned since she was young. The inquiry into Boluarte is the latest in a long history of probes into Peruvian presidents and senior officials. Moving on to WION's monthly economic check. First, we look at how the global markets performed in March. Oil rose a little, with Brent crude hitting $87 per barrel as the geopolitical situation in West Asia and Europe remained tense. The need for safe haven assets and the possibility of rate cuts by the US Fed and other central banks globally helped gold regain its shine. Gold now trades at record high levels. The dollar gained in March as investors assess the timeline of rate cuts by the US Fed. Moving on to Asia-Pacific stock markets, Japanese stocks reversed its strong gains from the start of the year, down by 1.5%. Australian stocks saw a 3% gain. The real estate and economic crisis continues to weigh on the Chinese stocks. Indian stocks showed resilience during the month. Indian benchmark indices tested new lifetime highs as India's forex reserves rose to record highs. The rally was mixed in American stocks, with the S&P 500 gaining and the Nasdaq losing a little over 0.1%. The picture was rosy for the European and African markets. All the indices in the region rose. Coming to the overall economic outlook in the Asia-Pacific region. India continues its economic climb, with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman hinting at an 8% growth in the first quarter of 2024. Non-manufacturing business sentiment slightly improved in Japan, although the overall outlook remains negative.